you can quote things more on the art side. And I would love to hear your opinion on that, being historian in this field. Obviously, there is a tendency in every discipline to find the different layers in a painter's production, to find different meanings, to find the different techniques in an analytical way, and to find a way to describe what we see and to put a meaning to it. Do you think that was always intentional by the painters themselves? Do you think they've really put the meaning that we see behind what they did in the way that we did? Or was it the things that they produced just a very instinctive and natural and natural representation of their geniuses, maybe?
I think often artists do start out with an idea of what they're doing. But I think they don't know entirely what they're doing. Mm-hmm. That is, the process itself dictates a lot of what they end up doing. Mm-hmm. And their choices about what they're doing are influenced by factors kind of beyond their control.
Yeah.
If you think about a human being, we're sitting here talking about one thing, but we're also in that moment the product of all sorts of things, like what we ate for breakfast, what we heard on the news, the upcoming election in the United States. And other elections around the world.
Everywhere.
And I think that in as much as creatives make work that is meant to move or stimulate or provoke their audiences and many other things besides those things, they can't ever be aware of these sneak factors, that don't necessarily manifest themselves as recognizable content.
But they affect them subconsciously.
Yes, there's a big difference between something like Picasso's Guernica, where we know exactly what stimulated that.
Yes.
Right? And it's a response to a horrific event that he read about in Paris that happened in his homeland. That's one kind of thing. And then there's something rather different, which is a little bit more like what I'm suggesting crept in Monet, some of Monet's later work, where he has dark days, I guess I'm interested in, when I look at artists, not just in whether they have good days painting and bad days painting, but what the range, emotional palette might even be.
Yeah.
And, like some days I need to look at something like Guernica, and some days I maybe don't. So I think they're artists whose work is more about being in the dark. Mm-hmm. Maybe because their experience is about being in the dark. And then there are people who, may have that experience, but choose, to try to roll the curtain down on that. And I find that people who make choices on any given day. They don't necessarily even know what those choices may be. You know, it comes out in the making.
Yeah, I guess that's a whole different perspective, because in terms of, I guess to summarize, my question was whether they're doing this as a result of an emotional or as a result of a thoughtful process. But I guess what you said, it makes very great sense that even when it's emotional, it's being affected by different factors. So
and some people are really they're just much more, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And they do it, and they're not as interested in where the process might take them. They're not, you know, it's not about the felt. It's about, you know, a pre-existing vision of what they want the work to be. So don't get me wrong. I don't think we're all, you know, just a blubber of, you know, whatever emotions we may feel waking up on any given day. Certainly not. I mean, people have their craft, and they have their training, and they have their vision. But I do think that artists, especially, they may have a vision. They will tell you what that vision is. And I basically think that that's not the total story ever. The canvas, once it goes out of or whatever it is, the pot, you know, the sculpture, the text, once it goes out in the world, it has a different life. It has the life of the viewer and the reader and the listener, and that has something to do with what the artist intended. And sometimes it has nothing to do with what he intended. I mean, you know, it'd be nice if it had something to do with what the artist intended, right? But I think, you know, people bring different things to the table, and, you know, we bring our own historic moment. We bring our own culture. We bring our education. We bring so many things, right? And so, I mean, as an art historian, you know, one of the things I have to address a lot is, well, you know, even a 5-year-old could make that.
Yes.
But the truth of the matter is that a 5-year-old was not working in the context of a tradition of visual art, and not, you know, maybe being the first person to decide to make a shaped canvas, or to decide to show, you know, somebody with their nose to the side and their nose facing full front simultaneously. I mean, sure, untutored people can make that work, but it isn't the same, because they don't sustain that vision.
Yeah.